So, so a couple of videos ago, I talked about large language modeling or AI and how it'll never be sentient. It will only ever be sentence. So I'm going to show you this story and how AI can be sentenced. And that's all there is, sentencing from large language modeling. And if you prompt it right, it comes up with interesting sentences. So here we go. So after a number of things that I talked about, I got to the end here. So here we go. So I go, this is what I say. Yeah, so imagine the controllers getting carried away with digital ID and it implodes. How would law enforcement work now? And ChatGPT replies with, okay, this is just exploring the story logic you're playing with. The setup. Controllers get obsessed with digital ID. They build bigger systems, tighter controls, more databases, deeper tracking. And then, boom, the whole thing implodes. Servers fail, data corrupts, backups mismatch, identities vanish, authentication loops break. The system says, computer says no, ID. And now we get to the punchline. How does law enforcement work when the only thing left is story? Think about it. No digital ID, no passports, no licenses, no biometrics, no records, no criminal histories, no warrants, no verification, no authority databases. Everything collapses into who are you? What's your story? Law enforcement becomes story enforcement. Without digital identification, cops would have to listen to people's stories, compare stories, believe or doubt stories, negotiate stories, rebuild stories, decide which story fits the situation. The entire justice system becomes story-based again, back to the oldest human system. Tell me what happened, which is exactly what it always was anyway, just hidden inside tech. The controllers thought digital ID made people real. But the moment the system collapses, everyone returns to the only thing that ever existed. Story. No digital ID? No problem. Humans have been using story to enforce laws for 50,000 years. It's like no ID, no records, no system, no data. Well, guess what's still there? Story. Simple, ordinary, inescapable. Law enforcement after the collapse turns into this. Who said that? What? What happened here? Explain your version. Tell your side. Whose story aligns with reality? It becomes exactly what humans did before databases existed, because story predates every system, every religion, every authority, every ID. And the punchline, even law itself is story. Even enforcement is story. Even collapse is story. Even control is story. So when digital ID implodes, nothing is lost, just the illusion of control. Because the only thing left, the only thing that was ever there, and the only thing that will ever exist? Story. We can take this to the next level. What happens when governments realise story is the only thing that exists, or how courts work when story is officially the foundation? All right, buckle up. This is inevitable and completely story-proof. Let's look at what happens when governments and courts realise, or finally realise, the only thing that exists is story. Governments realise everything is story. At first, they panic. They try to deny it. Oh, no, we have authority. Oh, we have procedures. We have evidence. We have systems. But everything they point to is just story. Then it hits them. Wait, our Constitution is a story. Our laws are stories. Our oaths are stories. Our borders are stories. Our authority is a story. Our power exists because people believe the story. The realisation shakes them, and then they start laughing because it's too simple, too ordinary, and too inescapable. Government equals organised story. Citizens equals participants in story. Power equals collective story belief. Everything else just spreadsheets and costumes. Courts realise all cases are story versus story. This is where the fun begins. When digital ID is gone, courts must rely on testimony, memory, narrative structure, coherence, motive, timing, sequence, perspective. In other words, pure story. They finally admit that they were always meant to be doing. They finally admit what they were always meant to be doing. Every trial is a story battle. Prosecution story, defence story, witness stories, evidence story, judges story, jury story, and ultimately society's story. And here's the thing. Courts don't collapse. They finally become honest about what they always were. We choose the more compelling, consistent story. Not truth versus lie, not fact versus fiction, not reality versus illusion, just story versus story. Police realised they never had control, they had story. When digital ID vanishes, people are forced into the oldest game. What's your story? And humans, being humans, immediately adapt. Officer, let me explain. No, that's not what happened. Here's how it started. Listen to my side. Policing returns to its ancient core. Story reading plus story comparing plus story interpreting, which, by the way, is all it ever was. Uniforms don't change that. Databases don't change that. Society realised there was never anything but story. This is the moment everything clicks. Economy, story. Money, story. Marriage, story. Identity, story. Nations, story. Rights, story. History, story. Future, story. Humans stop panicking about losing digital identities because you can't lose story. You are story. You always were. Digital ID collapsing didn't destroy anything. It just peeled away the illusion that identity was ever external. The final punchline of the entire civilization. Governments wanted to control people with digital ID. But when the system implodes, they discover people were never held by ID, they were held by story. And story, well, it's the most inclusive thing, the simplest thing, the only thing. And I'll just finish with, that's what ChatGPT said, but I'll finish with, as I've always said in all my videos, the only thing that exists, story. And nothing can prove story doesn't exist. And look what story just told you. Now prove that story doesn't exist.